So for energy and utilities in the past, what we relied on for business transformation was electricity generated and distribution assets life cycle. But that's all changing. The consumer now is so empowered. They're adopting smart into their lives, and so businesses have to be smart. In fact, the consumer is so empowered now that they actually are harnessing the decision-making power for their energy destiny. What does that mean for energy and utilities? What it means is that we can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. We have to move into the future. So social media is so important, and probably not for the reasons that you might assume. Normally, when people talk about social media, they say things like, well, when it comes to energy and utilities, the consumer isn't really interested in talking to us. They're not interested in talking to energy and utilities because of the conversation of the past. It's time to move into the future. So it's about not only disseminating your message with great content, sharing your brand, it's more than giving them an update on a hurricane or a storm or a power outage. There's so much more that we can do with social media that hasn't been harnessed in the past because we didn't have the technology. What we do in THULIUM is we are taking data. We have a lot of data that we extract from social media. Social media gives us so much information. Every click, every like, every comment, every retweet, every share gives us information that previously we didn't have the computing capacity to do anything with. This is unstructured data. We now have the ability to begin to get all kinds of information from sentiment. Social channels that utilities have typically used are Twitter, also YouTube. Does that surprise you? Because video is very important. Now, these statistics I'm giving you on the next couple of slides are all I have to go on because of what's been used in the past. And people are consuming bytes of information, right? A 60-second video, a 90-second video. The reason Twitter's so popular is it's quick, it's fast-moving. You can consume content in bite-sized chunks. We call it snackable content. The kind of content now getting engagement, mind you, is the only content I have to work with because currently energy and utilities are mostly putting out content about emergencies, power outages, what to do in the event of X, Y, or Z. So I don't have anything more to measure than that. I'm saying right now, in order to be ahead, stay ahead in this digitally disruptive time, is to start shifting the messaging. And shifting the messaging to something that people care about. Now, what's really cool about this room is that sitting at every table here are actual human beings, right? And now, how many of you have ever interviewed for a job and got it? Anybody? Okay. How many of you ever went on a date and ended up with a partner? Okay, so let the record show the room is filled with relationship experts. Because I'm telling you, if you've done any of those things, you know what went well in some scenarios and what went wrong. And most of the time, when your messaging is not received, it's because of the delivery. And that's true with any relationship. On social media, it's no different. It's just that on social media, you have to be exquisitely wise in how you apply your communication. Consumers are responding. They do want information on social, and it's a powerful tool to not only have the dialogue, but to start extracting information from the data. That's where analytics gets juicy. I'm a complete geek, nerd woman. I love data and analytics. Why? Because I can measure when I do X, Y happens. So if you want to know what your customers are talking about, what they care about, you have to begin listening. Listening instead of doing all the talking. Now, Hurricane Sandy was a really interesting study for us because it was important to the customer, they engaged. So PSE&G actually got 43,000 followers on social media from that storm. Why? Because they cared. It was relevant. It was something that they were interested in. So it's always about tapping into what the customer is interested in. Now, because of the Internet of Things, IoT, things are going to get really personal, right? In our homes, the thermostat, the toaster, everything, our healthcare will be monitored. It's going to have a sensor that sends information through the internet. That's what makes it the Internet of Things, that gives us more data. Well, the more data we capture and the more important it is to the consumer, the more personal it becomes, the more important the energy and utility company becomes. How many of you have a cellular phone? I should say, is anybody in this room without one? That is so personal. We are connected at all times. Now, do any of you sleep with that phone on the nightstand next to your bed? Did you know statistically that we sleep next to our phones more than we do our significant other? That's how personal it is. Because it's personal, I'm telling you that you're missing the mark if you don't think people are interested in energy and utilities in the future. You make them interested because it's connected to their lives. You are connected to their lives. That's where the conversation needs to go. That's where the content should be driven. Social done right is be human, for heaven's sakes. Nobody wants to connect to a boring, banal, old utilities company, right? They want to connect to something that feels real. The company needs to have a human feel to it. Have fun, for heaven's sakes. What I love about this one example that I have from Duke Energy is they literally posted a picture. Visuals are key. People love pictures. Don't you love pictures and video? So posting a picture with some human element, humanize the business. If you're wondering why you're not connecting to a customer, typically it's because you don't have a message that's connecting. So take a look at your messaging. Are you tapping into what they care about and humanizing your company through that? So utilities are being disrupted by new technology, and it's only until we cannibalize our own old, outdated modes of being and being willing to disrupt ourselves that we insulate ourselves from more agile, nimble startups. I say it's time for energy and utilities to start acting like technology companies, because you know what? You are. Start acting like startups and pay attention to being consumer-centric. That means be obsessed with your customer. If you don't know them, you should, and you can now because we have the ability to learn so much from the data. We don't have to guess anymore. We can find out what they're talking about, where they are, what they care about, and how to intersect with them, because it's becoming quite personal that we are at all times connected. How many connected devices is projected by even 2020? Do you realize it's already 2016 going on 2017? We used to talk about 2020 like it was so far away. It's not far away anymore. It's right on our doorstep. One thing I want to mention is that it's so critical to be able to listen. I've been listening all day to all the presentations, and what I love is various segments are being offered by different perspectives. One massive perspective I will ask you is that if you want the customer to be engaged with you, you need to stop talking to them, start listening to them. Anybody in here ever have a teenager? Does anybody ever know any teenagers? How do you connect at that personal level? You do it by getting involved in what they like. You don't motivate, inspire, or influence anyone by telling them anything. No one's followed a leader into battle because they were told something. They followed because they were moved. They were influenced by the sense of power that caused them to take an action. A teenager from a parent is moved when the parent is interested in something about them and can communicate with them at their level. Your customers need that same level of communication from their utilities companies to care. So instead of telling them something, you can create great content after harnessing the data, doing the social listening, and knowing what they care about. What do they want to talk about? We have the metrics to know what posts get the most engagement, what posts are liked the most. That's how we know how to create content that the customer cares about. So it's about stop talking, start listening, and realize that it's time for us to transform our ideas about what an energy and utilities company really is, because it's quite personal now. And with the Internet of Things, there's never been a more powerful time, an exciting time to be alive and to transform our own concepts of what we believe that we can and can't do. We have to disrupt ourselves. That's the best level of communication, to reach in and connect and be truly influential with your target audience. Thank you.